Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, South Africa Photo Expedition, Framing the Big Five, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Russell Gerber. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Russell, take it away.
Thank you, Rob, as always, for a wonderful introduction. And thank you all of you for joining us for this daily dose of nature. It's been a while since I've been back. It's good to be joining you all again for another one of these wonderful webinars. And of course, today's topic, all about our secluded South Africa photo expedition and framing the Big Five. We'll be going into all sorts of details about the trip. For those of you who are joining us on a trip this year or next year or thinking about joining us, hopefully this will give you some valuable information, some interesting information, and maybe just some stuff to get you excited about the trip. But we will go through all sorts of details about it, from the beginning through to the end, the accommodation and all the interesting bits and bobs about these wonderful locations and what makes this such a unique destination. And of course, touching on a lot of those photo expedition specialties that we lean into on these kinds of photographic safaris. So my name is Russell Gerber, as Rob so kindly introduced me, coming to you live from Cape Town in South Africa. It's just about 9 o'clock in the evening here. And I've been with NatHab since 2018 as an expedition leader. I've been in the safari world since 2004 as a safari guide, but actually studied marine biology and African vertebrate biology. So a little bit of everything in what I was interested in terms of the wild and wildlife. And, you know, I've spent the last 20 years or so really enjoying the most remarkable places all over the world. I've guided in, of course, Africa, in the Bahamas, United Arab Emirates, and in Thailand even, where I spent quite a lot of time. And yeah, still now living in Cape Town, and yeah, still doing trips all over Africa for NatHab, including Uganda and Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, and of course, Southern Africa, which we'll be focusing on this evening. So that's just a little bit about myself. Hopefully I'll get to see some of you on one or two of these trips this year or next year. Otherwise, maybe on another one of our wonderful departures on the continent. So maybe some of you have met me before, maybe not, but that's just a little bit of my background. So what are we talking about today, folks? This wonderful picture was actually taken at one of our destinations on this particular departure. And this was at Marataba. And one of the most wonderful things about that location is, of course, the scenery encapsulating these amazing large mammals that are so prevalent in the areas that we visit on the secluded safari. Now, as I mentioned to you, today's focus is going to be on basically walking you through the whole itinerary, from when you arrive, what sort of vehicles we'll be traveling in, what to expect in camp, and what sort of experiences your day will entail from the morning wake up until your evening heading to bed, with the African bush sounds all around you. And then we'll go into some of the nitty-gritty on what to bring, what might be useful on your safari, and maybe hopefully delve into some of your questions at the end of things that might be nagging you if you're thinking of coming out on the trip or are already coming out. And you can fire away with some of those queries as well if I don't cover them in the next hour or so. So that's just a rough outline of things, and I wanted to give you a feel of what these safari regions would look like. This one is, as I mentioned, of course, Marataba. And this wonderful vista taken from one of our safari walks on this particular departure. This was at Mala Mala, looking down into one of the tributaries running through that wonderful game reserve in the Sabi Sands or Kruger National Park. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on that as well. And as I said, taken on a walk, yet another one of the experiences that you can enjoy while on a safari and on our secluded South Africa safari, even on the photographic departure as well. So we would definitely try and get you out on foot on some of our days in the bush. It's really a totally different experience, but we'll go into the walking safari bits a little later on in our chat today. But again, giving you a feel for that wonderful African bush and safari and savanna regions. And the Sabi Sands, or Mala Mala in this particular case, is easily one of my favorite safari destinations on the planet. Yeah, one that I know you will all enjoy if and when you get out here to join us. Another thing that, of course, these regions are famous for, and something that safari is synonymous with, is the beautiful sunsets that we have. Often we refer to them as sundowners, where we will stop on our afternoon game drives out somewhere in the wild, hop out of our vehicle, and have a couple of refreshing beverages as we watch the sun dip below the horizon. And this is also just a wonderful part of the whole experience. And for many people, one of the things that people will take home and remember and think back fondly on as they sit at home at the end of the day, perhaps having a coffee or a cocktail at the end of the day, and just thinking about those wonderful times spent in the African bush with no sounds around you except those coming from the animals, the birds, sometimes the large mammals, lions roaring in the distance, or elephants rumbling in the distance. For many people, the sunsets and sunrises are what make this trip so absolutely special. And from a photographic point of view, of course, those sunsets, sunrises, the golden hour of light, and these dramatic clouds in this particular instance all come together to create these wonderful photographic opportunities. And again, things that we will touch on a little later on in our webinar this evening. So let's go into, first of all, where you're headed and a little bit about the destinations themselves, of where they are. Of course, South Africa, right on the bottom of Africa, for those of you who didn't know that. And the tip of Africa is where I am at the moment. You'll see at the bottom left-hand corner there in Cape Town. But we begin our adventure on this particular safari in Johannesburg, that blue arrow over there, where we will spend one night together, simply getting to know each other and having our first welcome dinner evening together, where you'll get to meet the rest of the group, myself, and then we will have a wonderful meal together and chat all about the trip ahead. Potentially a lot of the stuff I'm telling you now. So if you're joining me on one of our secluded South Africas this year, you might hear this spiel again when you land, but I'm sure you'll be able to handle it with a glass of wine or coffee in hand. But that's where we begin our adventure at the wonderful Fairlawns Boutique Hotel. And then from there, the next morning, we jump straight onto a plane and fly to the northwest, right to the border between South Africa and Botswana, to the wonderful Madikwe Game Reserve. It's one of the largest private reserves in Southern Africa, and home to a vast amount of large mammals, particularly elephants. And we often get wonderful photographs of those big gray giants in that particular region on our trip. As we move along on the safari portion of the trip, we go further to the east. Our next stop is our yellow arrow, not too far away at Marataba. We actually do a short drive from there. Well, it's about a 3-hour drive to the east. And as we go in that easterly direction, things get a little bit more green. You start to see a little bit more of the terrain changing as well. We go from quite a flat area in Madikwe, heading into a fairly mountainous area when we get to Marataba itself. And as I say, you'll also notice the vegetation change as the rainfall gradually increases, or the average annual rainfall gradually increases as we go east. And then finally, after our wonderful time at Marataba, we jump on a plane and fly across directly east to our eastern border with Mozambique, and of course into the wonderful Kruger National Park, to the private reserve Mala Mala, where we finish off our safari. Now, why did we pick these regions, or how did we decide that these were the key places to go on our secluded South Africa adventure? The truth is, they're just abound with animals. And the big five, of course, is the big attraction for what everybody wants to see. And for those of you who don't know what that is, of course, elephant, rhino, buffalo, lion, and leopard are the big five. We can go into why that was, or how they got that name, the big five. But essentially, it is the most interesting animals that people like to see on a trip to Africa in terms of the large mammals. So in these areas is some of the best viewing of those particular animals and many other large predators and just larger species like crocodile, hippos, giraffe, zebra, all of these iconic African species as well. And each place that we visit, as I mentioned, is slightly different, with Madikwe being the driest, almost semi-desert kind of region, and we move into a more savanna, mountainous type region in Marataba, and then finishing off in a subtropical region in the southern Kruger National Park, where you have these amazing riverine systems and riparian systems supporting a huge amount of large mammals in the southern part of Kruger. So that's why we've chosen these amazing locations, and that is the circuit for our trip. After Mala Mala, we fly straight back to Johannesburg and then sadly say goodbye to each other from there. So when coming on a trip like this, people often wonder, what and how do we go about packing for a safari? Now, there are quite a lot of complications, and one of the things you would have heard in your chats and information that you've read about coming on safari is that you would need to have a soft-sided bag and a duffel bag like this one. And you wonder, why on earth do I need a soft-sided bag? The main reason is we'll be often flying in smaller planes. The most common being a Cessna Grand Caravan, which I'll come to in a little while and show you exactly what that looks like. And that is the reason why in the holds of those planes, a hard, large-sided bag sometimes just doesn't fit underneath the plane. So having a malleable, soft-sided bag like this one is the perfect solution for that. On this particular trip, on the photographic safari trip, of course, we get a little extra in terms of weight. Mostly on our normal safaris, you get 44 pounds. On our photographic departures, you get 61 pounds in total, allowing for those extra bit of camera gear, which we'll also get to in just a moment. So this is the bag I would certainly recommend. And for myself, I often use packing cubes as well to get everything in. And we'll go into some of the details of what I think you should have on a trip in terms of clothing in just a moment. But something very useful that you would use every day on your trip is a good backpack. Now, many of you coming on our photographic trip will have a photo or photographic backpack itself for your camera gear, with some space for a jacket or a few bibs and bobs that you'd need to bring along on safari. And we'll go into those in just a moment as well. But your backpack is going to be your go bag for each day. And when we get here, I would go through with you what I'd want in that bag for you so that we can grab it and head out on an adventure at any given moment. You know, if something like a leopard shows up in front of the lodge and we want to get some pictures, or elephants in a herd come for a drink at the waterhole, being ready with our go bag to head out there and get the shot is always a huge advantage. And having that ready to rock and roll is always a key bit of advice I give everyone when you come to visit. Another good thing to have, of course, is some good shoes, not particularly hiking boots. In this case, they are hiking boots, but a good pair of closed shoes, comfortable shoes, even running shoes is totally fine. Trail running shoes tend to be, I think, the most commonly used and comfortable, even a good pair of boots, depending on what you prefer. But as long as they are closed-toed, particularly when we are out and about at night, or of course going on a safari, having those closed shoes just gives you a bit of extra protection from any particular nasty thorns or even some bugs that might be out there. So good comfortable shoes, always a good recommendation. So make sure you've got something like that before you come out. Don't go out and buy something special. A good pair of sneakers that you have at home will more than suffice for this type of safari. We don't spend a lot of time walking in the field. So really, it's just about what you've got that's comfortable. Walking sticks, up to you in terms of how you prefer to walk. If you walk with them at home, then for sure bring them along. We don't do a lot of walks, as I mentioned, maybe 2 or 3 on the whole trip. So you really don't need a lot. But if you want to bring one along and it fits nice and small into your bag, you're welcome to do so. But as I said, we really don't spend a lot of time on foot. Most of the time is spent in our vehicles. But when it comes to coming on safari, most of our trips run in the fall to spring time frame, with, of course, the peak being over winter, which means at night it can actually get quite cold on safari. It's often not considered to be the case because it's Africa and people think it's always hot. But surprisingly enough, in these desert and dry areas, it gets quite cold overnight. And on our morning game drive in particular, it can be quite chilly, even approaching freezing when we head out on drive early morning. So being prepared for that is important. The funny thing about Africa and coming on safari is that as you head into the day, from that early morning wake up, early drive and an open vehicle and the wind chill, as it starts to warm up around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and we've been out on safari for 3 hours already, things start to warm up very quickly. So being able to layer down as it warms up in the day is crucial. You will have space on the vehicle, and I'll show you that vehicle in just a moment, to take those things off and tuck them into a pouch so you can have extra things. Rather be too warm than too cold, always. And even with that, we will have blankets on the vehicles as well to keep your legs warm and keep you cozy in the mornings. By the mid-afternoon, though, as we head into the afternoon game drive, it can warm up into the late 80s, often in the middle of winter. So the temperature really does turn fast. But once again, as the sun drops below the horizon, the temperature can get quite cool again. So a good light long sleeve shirt or roll up shirt underneath, a nice jacket, sweater, even a sweater and a jacket, depending on how cold you are, is always a good option. Even just a t-shirt, sweater, and a jacket, great. That would be perfect for safari. Beanies and gloves, really useful, particularly gloves like these where you can use your finger or get your finger out so that you can take great shots while we're out on drive. A great option to bring on a photographic trip, particularly trying to get those early morning shots. And then, as I mentioned, despite all these cold things, as we head into the afternoon, it does warm up quick. So a hat and sunscreen, a good buff to protect your neck from the sun, and even to protect you from the dust, which can get quite intrusive in the middle of winter. A good buff is a great thing to have in your backpack or just in your bag on a trip for safari. Some folks like to bring along a waterproof bag or a dustproof bag. It's a really nice thing to have for your cameras. So it is nice to just pop them in there for while we're out on drive, if we perhaps get a little downpour of rain, or even to protect your camera gear from dust. It's certainly one way to do it. Otherwise, just bringing your whole camera bag along, making sure you keep it covered at all times with a shirt or a jacket or even a scarf, something like that, to make sure that you just keep that dust away from your camera. And lastly, I wanted to just touch on adapters for what you need to bring in your bag. Most of the lodges that we visit will have full adapters in your room that you can utilize for the duration of your stay. And at each lodge that we visit, they have plugs that are available to you. But if you'd like to bring them along, getting one that fits into a 3-prong plug type G is definitely the way to go. But if you have any questions on that, just reach out to your journey specialist and they will help you with that, with those little things. A flashlight or a headlamp, great to have as an accessory, but not necessary on this trip. We will always be with you in the evenings, and you actually will not be walking anywhere on your own without us. But it's always nice to have as an extra thing. So if you do have one that is your favorite, bring it along on safari. Another thing that I feel is essential for a good safari trip is a good pair of binoculars. There are a couple of brands out there that are crazy expensive, but excellent quality, like Swarovski, Zeiss, Leica are the major 3 brands, but anything that you know of, Bushnell, Nikon, the guys at Vortex, all make wonderful pairs of binoculars that will last you a lifetime. And if you are coming on a safari like this one, I would recommend getting yourself a nice pair. They do really last you forever if you look after them, and they are invaluable on your safari trip. And what would a photographic trip be without talking about photo gear? So what would I recommend for you to bring along on safari? Well, as always with any photographic trip, whatever you've got is the most important. The best you can bring along is going to be handy. An iPhone, if that's all you've got these days, takes wonderful photographs, or a Samsung Galaxy, they all take wonderful pictures these days. But if you are getting into the world of wildlife photography, stepping up to get yourself a new mirrorless or DSLR camera system is absolutely the way to go for those really professional quality pictures. A lot of people will shoot on Canon, Sony, and Nikon tend to be the most popular these days. Of course, there's a number of other wonderful brands, Fuji and Olympus, and many more, each of which have their own strengths and weaknesses. But at the end of the day, they're all going to get you wonderful pictures on your safari. So bringing along the best body that you can in terms of your camera gear is going to be key. If you have 2 bodies, bring them both along if you have the space. But I tend to travel with just the 1 body these days on safari, with a couple of lenses in my bag to give me as much opportunity as possible to get the shot. So for myself, I tend to shoot on Canon and have for a long time, only because that's what I started with and I've stuck with it. Doesn't matter what you go for, they're all excellent. But for myself, and what I would recommend to you as your 2 key lenses to bring along on safari, something of a telephoto lens is going to be wonderful. Ideally, something like a 100 to 400, 100 to 500 millimeter, even a 70 to 200 millimeter. All of those are going to be a wonderful kind of zoom range for the kind of distance that we get from the animals that we see on our trips, and would be the range of zoom I would recommend for you to bring along. There's no need for you to go much bigger than that. We often are quite close to the animals because we can go off-road on our vehicles, and we'll talk about that as well in just a moment. But that sort of focal range is definitely going to be the sweet spot for what I think you would need on a trip. And then another lens would be something like a everyday lens, let's say a 24 to 105 millimeter, if you have something like that, or even just a nifty 50 or a wide angle lens as well. Any one of those will give you a second option of getting a more scenic shot or more wide angle on any of the things that we're looking at, and just give you some more options if we're too close to the animal or the object that we're trying to get that picture of. So that would be my brief little outline on what I think would be the best lenses to bring along on your safari for your photographic trip itself. But we need to move on. We can talk about camera gear and all that sort of stuff in detail. There are quite a few wonderful webinars on our Daily Dose of Nature on photography. So do go check those out. I know Richard Degove has done some wonderful things on that. And lastly, to bring something along to store your pictures, whatever you use, whether it be a laptop, iPad, or even just a hard drive, a solid state drive to download all your pictures to keep them safe. Also nice to have a big screen to look at the photographs that you've taken and give you an idea of what might be good and what might not be. And sometimes what you think was not good can actually be a wonderful photograph, and having it on the big screen can be helpful before you delete it forever. So bring something along as well that you can back up those pictures on. So now coming back to our itinerary and where we start, as I mentioned, we kick off in Johannesburg at the wonderful Fairlawns Hotel. This is just a couple of pictures of that wonderful residence. And as I say, we have one lovely night there to get to meet each other before we head off on the next adventure. That next adventure, as I said, is in Madikwe Game Reserve, where we will have the opportunity to eat outdoors like this in some of these beautiful scenic locations, and often at a private location away from all the crowds and other safari goers. And you will get to experience some of the wonderful service and comfort that is available in Madikwe and in South Africa as a whole on safari. Bearing in mind that in these locations there is internet, there's Wi-Fi throughout at all four of our destinations that we visit. It's not always the fastest, just so that you're aware of that, but you have access throughout the trip to Wi-Fi, which is always quite handy. All of our locations are also air conditioned, so you get that sort of comfort when we're out in the bush. Although, as I said, sometimes at night it's really cold, but they've often got some nice surprises for you to keep you warm in your bed at night. And then during the day, as I said, a fan and air conditioning to keep you cool. So total comfort in the lodges. We move on from there to the wonderful Marataba. This is our main dining area. We often eat out under the stars and under the trees. And as you can see, super comfortable. And the animals often come right up onto the lawn during the day. Impala and other antelope species often come and feed underneath that camel thorn tree. So they really do, you really do get up close and personal with many of the animals in these areas. Marataba is a tented camp, but it's certainly not the tents that you remember from your scout days when you were a kid. It's obviously totally different and very luxurious and comfortable. And this is just a little taste of what those tented rooms are like at Marataba. Then moving on to Mala Mala and the wonderful deck out in front of main camp. And of course, in front of us, the Sand River down there, where of course wonderful animal sightings are abound all the time. We've actually witnessed a leopard kill from that little seating area. We've seen lions laying in the river, elephants walking up all the time, hippos, you name it. From that deck, we've seen them. Of course, it all comes down to luck on the day, but man, as game goes, Mala Mala has got to be one of the best game viewing areas in the world. And again, just a little taste of the comfort that you can expect in the rooms at Mala Mala. And this is, of course, what a room would look like at your stay there. Now, I did promise you just a quick taste of what our transport would look like and how we would get around. So we fly from Johannesburg after Fairlawns on a Cessna just like this one, where we fly across to Madikwe. And then from Madikwe, we do a short transfer in a couple of comfortable SUVs to take us to Marataba. And then from Marataba, back onto these little Cessna Grand Caravans across to Mala Mala. So a very comfortable plane, a workhorse of Africa, flying all over the continent, and actually a really fun plane to fly in. It can get a little bumpy if you are not comfortable with flying, but the pilots are excellent. They will talk you through everything, and it is a wonderful way to get around Africa and really gets us into these wild places so fast and safe. It's really the wonderful way to get around on safari. But the time that we will spend, or the place that we'll spend most of our time, excuse me, in terms of vehicles, is of course these game drive vehicles, which we'll be in twice a day, on every day that we're on safari. Starting off early in the morning with an early wake-up call, normally around 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Have a little snack and a coffee, and then into our vehicle to get out on safari in the morning. This, of course, was taken at Mala Mala. And you can see in the front left there, if you're not sure what that is a leopard walking right by the side of a vehicle and a family together on safari. So this is, of course, not typical of every day, but certainly not impossible on any of our safaris. And I took this picture on one of our safaris last year. So as you can see, it is very much a possibility. And these vehicles is what we will be in most of the time. As you can see, 3 rows of seats, and you'll have the comfort of having a window seat throughout our time together. I will always ask you to switch things up so that you move around on the rows. But as you can see, there's plenty of space and comfort for you to put your stuff in between you. There's pouches in front of you on the seats as well. So there's always somewhere to pop your things while we're out on safari. And then we'll also have space for things like bean bags to rest your cameras on to get the best shots. You can even bring along a monopod, which will help you just to give you a little bit more stability in the vehicle too, if you have a monopod to bring along. All of those things are wonderful accessories to have to get the best possible shots we can while we're on our photographic trips. So yeah, these old Land Rovers and Land Cruisers are very often the vehicles we will spend most of our time in. There's another one in Madikwe with a wonderful breakfast experience under the trees after our morning safari. This was out in the middle of the bush where they surprised us with a wonderful breakfast out in the bush as well. And once again, you can see here the Toyota Land Cruiser and the tiered seating. Lots of space for you to bring anything that you might need along with you. Now, many people will wonder, okay, well, that's all good and well, Russell, but where do we go to the bathroom while we're out there? And I can tell you, in Africa, there's an old saying that every tree is a lavatory. So we stop wherever is needed at any time. We have all sorts of things in the vehicle to help for your comfort, and so we can go wherever we need to go. But it is often 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 hours out at a time in the vehicle. But we can always find a place for you to go and visit the bathroom. In the vehicles, we have tea and coffee and water, fresh water available all the time, sodas, soft drinks, etc. So there's never a shortage of snacks and beverages with us as we go out on our adventures in between the thousands of photographs that we'll be taking on our trips. Another thing that I mentioned earlier that we would love for all of you to experience is to come on a walking safari with us as well. We often do this in the early mornings while it's still nice and cool. And we bring along our smaller cameras just to get pictures of some of the smaller things, but to get a feel for being in the bush, away from the vehicle and the noise of the vehicles. There's really nothing like it to feel immersed in the African environment. So we will certainly do some walking safaris while we're on or in the bush on the safari. And lastly, photography is, of course, a big part of the trip itself. We will do our best to position you in the right spot for light. We will be always looking at where our subjects are in terms of where the light is. We will try to get out in the early mornings and late afternoons for the best possibility at the best light for the best photographs we can get. And at the end of every day, we will chat about what we've seen, how to get the best out of those shots, and of course, even go into some editing things so that you get a real total picture, excuse the pun, of what we've done in the day and to get the best out of your photography. So that's just a little bit of an outline of everything on the trip itself. So I wanted to give you guys plenty of time to ask some questions. It's always the best way for me to answer things that you might be wondering about. I hope I've touched on most of the things that people tend to worry about. But here for all your questions. So if you have anything on your mind or anything that you're not sure about, please feel free to fire away. So thank you very much.
All right, Russell, thank you so much. Now, before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have a question, you can submit it into the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right corner. You'll see those 3 lines. Go ahead and click on those, and you'll see the question field there. All right, so let's dive into some of these questions. So, how many people are going to be on this trip with me, Russell?
Great question, Rob. So the maximum that we will have on a trip is 6. So as we spoke about with those vehicles, 6 people, 3 rows. So 2 people in each row, and then I would be sitting in the front next to our ranger guide for all of our drives. So you'll have 2 guides with you on every safari, and then the maximum of 6 guests in the vehicle itself. So obviously sometimes we don't have a full trip, but most of the time that is what we would get. So 6 people plus myself and our ranger guide in the vehicle, and sometimes we will even have a tracker on the front of the vehicle who sits on a specially made seat right on the hood of the vehicle, and they're there to look for tracks in the sand and on the road, and help us spot the animals as well. So yeah, it's a really exclusive safari experience with such small groups, and it's really quite unique for our itineraries in Africa, actually.
Great, thank you so much. So, what is the difference, the major difference between the photo expedition and the regular expedition, besides fewer people, it seems?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, of course, our focus is going to be much more on photography. We will really try to elevate your photography skills, or perhaps if you never really tried photography, we will really try ignite that passion and give you some ideas on really how to get the most out of the gear that you have. And as I said, even if that's just an iPhone or your iPad or anything that you might have with you, that would be how we would try to focus the trip more than the standard trip itself. So while we would do that on any trip, just to give you some idea, the photographic expeditions, we will spend more time in sightings, focusing on behaviors, looking for the perfect light, positioning of the vehicles, and really trying to get the most out of that. The other side of it, of course, as I mentioned, is we do even get extra luggage on these particular trips. So you have more space to move around and to get your best pictures, and allow you to bring some extra lenses and gear that you otherwise wouldn't be able to bring along on a trip. Lastly, we will actually find particularly areas on our trips where we will try to get in position nice and early and sit and wait for the animals to come as well. And that is not always the case when we're on the regular trips, just because it requires a little bit more patience that we as photographers have to really embrace, trying to chase the perfect shot. So getting out nice and early to arrive at a spot when the light is just right. Those are the kinds of things we would be focusing on for sure, Rob. So all about improving your photography and getting the most out of your pictures and the gear that you have. And again, hopefully elevating those skills to the point where you can keep moving up in your photography journey. So that's really what they're all about.
So, with just 6 people, that means I get a window seat for the entire time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's absolutely right, and that's why I said if you need to bring along a monopod or a beanbag or anything like that, you will have the space for it, and you'll have the angles and the the space in your seat to move around and utilize that as is needed. But as I said, we as a team with our ranger guide, we will always move the vehicle around in each sighting to get you into the right positions, and to get different angles of the animals itself. This particular shot that I've got up on screen now, this leopard had lain dead still for about half an hour, and she hadn't moved, was totally relaxed, eyes closed, and we sat there for ages hoping that she would get up, and eventually she stood up in this particular tree, put her claws out and started clawing it just like a little house cat, looking down at us from the tree, and we managed to get these wonderful shots from that particular experience. And that's again what it's all about is the patience, the timing, and we'll be there to guide you through those particular behaviors, being ready with your camera to get the shot, and that's really what we're out there to do.
So are we only going to be in private reserves, or are we going to be in national parks as well?
Excellent question. Yes, they're all private reserves. Even though I mentioned the Kruger National Park, which is a national park itself, we will be in areas that are known as private concessions. So Mala Mala is a private concession area, Marataba, a private concession, and Madikwe, a private safari reserve. So each of those areas means that we have the ability to go off-road. So we're allowed to go off-road depending on the weather and the location of those particular vehicles, but also the type of animal will decide whether we can go off-road. So you can't go off-road for an impala or for a giraffe, but we can for big animals, or the big five in general, and other things like wild dogs and cheetah. Now, being able to go off-road means we can get up close for photographs just like this one. As you can see, folks, I'm a bit of a leopard fiend. I love taking pictures of leopards. And one of the things about these places that we're visiting is the big cat viewing is just phenomenal. And being able to go off-road and enjoy those benefits of a private reserve is one of the reasons we visit these places. And the other thing to mention is that because they're private reserves, all of the guides are talking to each other on the radio all the time, and each sighting is limited to a maximum of 3 vehicles at a time. So we're never in crowds, we're never pressured by others to move away, or the animals feeling pressure in any way. It really is the best way to see these animals with the lowest impact on them, and for us to get the best possible shots out of the whole thing.
Great, thank you. So where we're staying, will we be the only group in our camp area?
No, so depending on which lodge we're in, but for the most part, there will be others around us, other people enjoying safari rides and safari experiences. We will have our own vehicle, so we'll have the whole vehicle to ourselves, private vehicle, and we will also have private dining each night. So each night we will have lunch and dinner and breakfast, excuse me, we will have all together at our table for just the 6 of you and me, so 7 each night. So while we will not have the whole reserve and the whole lodge to ourselves, we do get a private vehicle, and each meal we will have a private setting and table for ourselves. And occasionally we can do some lovely surprises of dinners out in the wild, or out in nature, where we can enjoy it on our own as well. But other than that, no, there will be other visitors and guests in camp. But again, we don't see a lot of them, and you'll be surprised how few people there are, or that you notice throughout the day. Everyone seems to disappear in the middle of the day for your siesta, which is very common. And it depends on the weather too. And like in this particular shot, it was raining. We were out on the drive. It was just an incredible sighting of about 22 lions. And this particular young female happened to yawn at the perfect time with all the rain falling down around her face. But the wonderful thing was we sat in this particular sighting on our own, no other vehicles, and we got to enjoy that whole thing. Got back to camp, and it seemed like there was nobody in camp at all. And that's just the nature of safari. But private reserves, like the ones we visit in South Africa, are the key to that.
Thank you for that. So, can you talk about clothing a little bit? Can you talk about colors? Is there something I should stay away from? And is it going to get cold at all at any point?
So a great question, particularly on the colors. I did mention about it getting cold at night and having those layers that you can remove when we're out on game drive in the morning as it gets warmer is key, and then having some cooler stuff to wear in the afternoon, but then those jackets to layer up again as it gets cold. But color is one that we get asked about a lot on safari, and you might see often things like, don't wear black, don't wear white, don't wear navy blue, don't wear bright colors. And all of those things for the type of trip that we are doing really are irrelevant. The color really doesn't matter at all. There's certain things about certain colors that perhaps are negative. So let's say for black, when you're out on safari and you're wearing a black outfit in the heat of the day, it can get hotter. So that's one particular reason that black is not amazing. White, while we can do laundry throughout our trip at all these different locations, white stuff in the water that we get from some of these in some of these locations, it's not always perfectly clear as we have at home, and sometimes white can get stained. So that's another reason why white isn't great. But in terms of the animals, it has no real impact. Navy blue is one that is often referred to for East Africa. Navy blue and dark gray in East Africa, not where we're going, because of the tsetse fly, can attract more of those tsetse flies to land on you. For Southern Africa, it's irrelevant once again. And then lastly, bright colors. People often wonder, well, bright colors, will they stand out to animals? Will it make me stand out to them? And the truth is, no. The animals don't see in that way. The color really doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. So if you have a beautiful bright pink jacket that is your favorite at home, that's the one you should bring. It makes no difference to the animals whatsoever. If you're going out to buy some safari gear, then yeah, some natural tone colors are what most people tend to wear and go for. It's what I mostly wear out on safari, but it really doesn't matter. So feel free to bring what you've got and be comfortable.
Great, good to know. Thank you for that. What about mosquitoes? Is there going to be a problem there? Is there anything I need to be vaccinated against?
Another great question, Rob. So while we tend to focus most of our safaris in the it's fall for us, the spring for you guys, the winter for us, summer for you, and of course spring for us and fall for you, tend to be the highest busy season. Now, as it gets colder, of course, we have fewer and fewer bugs and mosquitoes. Having said that, besides Madikwe in the beginning, beyond that, everywhere is a low-risk malaria area. Now, what does that mean? It means that we need to take precautions for malaria. So while there is no vaccination for malaria as yet, chatting to your doctor at home, your travel doctor, or even your GP to get advice on what to take as a prophylactic for treatment of malaria or malaria prevention. That is very important to do with your doctor before you come. Even though the risk is low, it's certainly something that you need to be aware of and to be on top of before you come. They will tell you exactly when to start taking, depending on the particular medication you have. But in the field and out on the ground, we will always have mosquito repellent around. so that you can utilize that to keep them away. Long sleeves in the evening and in the early mornings are recommended, but not always necessary, depending on how many mosquitoes there are around. So again, while you should absolutely be prepared for those things and take those precautions, we don't tend to see a lot of bugs in the season that we do go. And so it's not a huge concern, but yeah, for sure, make sure you are protected before we head out on safari.
Gotcha. So do the safari vehicles have tops for shade and rain protection?
In this particular case, no, Rob. Most of the reserves that we visit do not use tops, and one of the reasons for that is the off-roading we spoke about. So getting into the thick bush areas where a pride of lions may be lying, or where a leopard may be laying with her cub, often requires us to go underneath trees and branches and duck underneath bushes, and having the roof on just means you can't get into those places. So that's one of the big reasons why we don't have roofs on in our South Africa safari, which of course means being prepared for the sun is important. And I did mention earlier, going through the gear that you might need on the trip, that hat, sunscreen, and a good buff for protecting your neck from the sun is absolutely recommended. Even though it can be really cold in the morning and really cold in the evenings, during the day the sun is a lot more powerful than you think. So yeah, our vehicles will not have tops when we're out on safari, but obviously our transfer vehicles in between our lodges, those are going to be normal enclosed SUVs. And our vehicles in the cities, when we are in Johannesburg, from the airport to Johannesburg, will of course be enclosed vehicles as well. So it's only out on safari, but yeah, no roofs on our safari vehicles.
So when we're out and about on a typical day, will we end up going back to camp in the middle of the day, or is that variable?
Yes, sir. So the goal will always be to have 2 game drives a day, heading back to the camp normally around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, depending on what we see. And that's the wonderful thing about safari, is it all depends on what we're doing. If we're watching lions hunting, or we're watching elephants swimming in the river, we're not going to rush back for bacon and eggs. We're going to hang around and see what we can get in terms of our pictures, and just enjoy those wonderful moments. So the goal will always be our early morning game drive, come back to the lodge, have a bit of breakfast or brunch, head to the room for a siesta and a rest, which is often really important because we have a lot of time out in the field, often 8 hours a day in the field on safari. So that middle of the day rest is often something that people really, really enjoy. And so we take a nice rest in the middle of the day. We can have some lunch if you're feeling up for it, or we have a high tea, which is very common on safari, where we have a couple of savory and sweet snacks, and then head out on our afternoon game drive. And as I mentioned, we often have a morning stop. We will stop for a coffee or a tea somewhere to stretch our legs. And in the afternoon, as I mentioned in the beginning of our chat this evening, a wonderful sundowner to enjoy the African sunset, and also again to stretch your legs and get a refreshing beverage down your throat.
Will we be doing a lot of walking? And if so, how far and how much?
No, as I said, so this is very much a focused trip on being in the vehicle, particularly trying to get the sightings of these big game animals. When we do a walking safari, we're really not trying to find those big animals on foot. It's all focused on the smaller things. So if we did come across an elephant trunk sticking out of the water like this, we would probably walk in the opposite direction, because we wouldn't want to be too close to a big old pachyderm like that on foot. So we'll tend to do 2 or 3 walks on the trip, depending on the group that we have and availability. Also the weather, all these things play a role in how many walks we will do. But the idea of the walk as well, as you mentioned, Rob, is not a long walk. It's normally an hour, 2 hours, where we just take a slow stroll in an area where we can look at those small things, from insects to plants, trees, tracks, and spores, and dung, and all sorts of things and signs that we look for in the bush, just to help paint a picture for everybody on how we find the animals in the bush, and what signs we look for to find the big, you know, most attractive animal species that we're all looking for.
Will there be any opportunities for nighttime photography?
Absolutely, a great question. I don't know why, but I forgot to put in a wonderful nighttime picture. But yes, great question. At all of our lodges, we will come back in the evening after that sunset, where we'll be looking for some animals on the way back to the lodge. So nocturnal species like lion, leopard, hyena, aardvark, porcupines, all sorts of things like that we will be looking for in the evening, and then have the opportunity to take pictures of those animals. We use a spotlight in the evening to look for the animals, and for that reason, the diurnal animals, like this little baby elephant, we will not shine the light on them at night. The nocturnal animals have the ability to adjust their eyes much better to the spotlight, so we can view them. And with that, gives us the opportunity of getting great pictures of those nocturnal species if we're lucky enough to spot them out on a drive. So yes, every evening we will have a short nighttime drive coming back to the lodge.
Great, thank you. So, would having a 400 to 800 zoom uh, be helpful for me if I decided I wanted to bring that along?
Absolutely, yes. As long as you had another lens to get you below that 400. Because honestly, sometimes, as you saw in one of our pictures earlier this evening, that leopard walking right by the side of the vehicle, if you've got a 400 millimeter, you might get as close as this picture to the eye of the leopard. Chances are it will be too close for even that. So having something else like a 70-200, or even lower 24-105, or a 50 millimeter lens, those would be the kind of recommendations I would give you as a pairing. So something wide angle and something telephoto to have as your array. If you have the 400, 800, 100 to 400, and a 24 to 105, that's wonderful. And if you've got the space to bring it along, then do that, because it gives you a lot more freedom with your photography. So, as I said in the beginning, bring what you have, make the best out of what we can, and yeah, either way, we'll get you some amazing pictures on the trip.
Great, thanks for that. So, if I'm single and I'm coming on this trip alone, would this be a good trip for me? Will I have to share a tent? Could you go into that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. We've had a lot of people come on trips where they are single travelers, and you can get a room on your own. Some of our guests also request to share a room with somebody who may also be looking to share a room, someone you don't know, and then they can arrange that as well if we have availability. But yeah, if you want to come on your own and have and stay in your own room, you're more than welcome to do so. As I said, many of our guests do, in fact, do that. And so I would absolutely not hesitate to jump on a trip and get to meet some of the other travelers on the safari as well. But you'll still have the privacy of your own room if you want it. So the answer is yes, you absolutely can, and you should.
Great, thanks, Russell. So, what if I am an avid photographer, but my spouse is not? Is this trip still for us to go together on, or do you recommend the regular trip for that?
Again, absolutely yes. And while we, of course, are going to have some photography heavy parts of the trip, it is a trip for everyone. And I have had many guests who had partners or even those themselves that were not big photographers who wanted to come on the trip because they wanted to learn more about photography, or they just wanted to spend some more time in the field, as we often do on these photography trips. And they all just loved the trip. And so there's absolutely no reason not to come. And in fact, it works really well, these kinds of trips, for those who are interested in the photographic side and those who are more just interested in the wildlife and experience side. So absolutely, yes, you can come with a partner who's not interested in photography or not totally focused on photography. There's a little bit of something for everybody, no doubt.
So if I am coming all the way to South Africa, can you recommend any extensions or other trips that I could pair with this expedition?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the most popular and most common is to come visit me in Cape Town. Cape Town as a destination, not me, is a wonderful place to visit. Just the beautiful coastline, the mountains, the wine country, the food, penguins, Cape Point. All of those are a major attraction for many folks coming to visit South Africa, and it's often one of our most popular extensions. Another, of course, is to head up to Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe or Zambia, which is a very, very popular addition as well, if you'd like to check out the falls. And then many of our guests often tack on the South Africa safaris with our secluded Botswana safaris or Botswana Explorer safaris as a combination of the two. Namibia as well, even Zimbabwe. All of these are potential additions you can add to the trip itself, and those tend to be the most popular. And I have seen a lot of our guests actually go straight from South Africa onto a Botswana trip, or vice versa. So that's another option for you as well. But feel free to come visit in Cape Town as well.
It sounds wonderful. Unfortunately, Russell, that's going to be the last question that we do have for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for your closing comments.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, and thank you all of you for your questions and for your time this evening. I hope that this was as informative as I had hoped, and that you got an answer to all your worries or niggles about the trip. I really hope to see you out on one of our secluded South Africa trips this year or next year. It's been great talking to you again. I'll be back in a couple of months. But until then, cheers for now.
Russell, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab to South Africa, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.